G'day, bird nerds, nature nuts, garden enthusiasts, wildlife lovers. I'm Grant. I'm a bird nerd. I'm also a horticulturist, which is why we're doing habitat gardening. Welcome. Sorry for pushing the time back a little bit today. I booked in for a haircut, and I went to have my hair cut, and the person who cuts my hair had called in sick. So, what do you do? So, still got the wild man look. I'll have to do a self-improvement haircut, I think. Folks, I have got Loz here with me. Loz is currently on my newly manufactured perch extension to his playground. So he's now sitting he's up at about 1.5 meters above his normal spot. And I bought him a new toy, and it's coloured and it's got beads, and he loves it. So that's what he's up doing. Still contributing though, as you can hear. Now today I just want to talk about pruning. And I'm going to play a couple of videos and go over a few sort of tip sheets, and they'll be Australian plants sort of focused, but hopefully the general tips that I'm going to give you will give you enough knowledge to confidently approach pruning. I think it's just don't get caught up in rules that you must do this for certain trees. I remember how complicated. I remember when I was a kid, and uncles and grandma and grandpa were telling me all these rules about pruning fruit trees and citrus trees and roses, and it made me think it was just too hard, and hydrangeas and before I went and studied horticulture, I just thought all this stuff was a mystery, and nothing could be further from the truth. So what we'll do is we'll start with a couple of videos from YouTube, and they're basically marketing videos, really, but we'll have a look at them, and then I'll look at some information I think is really good, and then I'll just round off with my basic thoughts and my rule of thumb when I'm approaching a plant to prune, and if it's not a plant that I'm familiar with, and how we go about it. But first, this is from Ozbreed. Let me just pop them in. And Ozbreed are one of those plant growers, and I'll just make myself a little bit smaller. A lot of the improved, use that term loosely, a lot of the improved varieties of plants you'll see out in your nurseries will be from Ozbreed. And this is their video on pruning native plants. And I'll just make sure it's going to be loud enough. Yes. Let me know if you can't hear it when we get going.
Today I want to bust a myth about Australian native shrubs. The great thing about natives is you do not need to prune them. Rubbish.
Sure, in the bush they live and are happy. But do you want a great looking native or a scrappy bush plant?
It really ticks me off that people think that natives don't need pruning, when exotics do need pruning, and they expect the natives just to look as good as the exotics. It's crazy. Like, take these Mundi, for example. It gets pruned 3 to 4 times per year for a beautiful manicured look. The Mundi Westringia right next to it, well, it hasn't been pruned very often, probably not at all. It still looks pretty good. But if you want that manicured look, then prune your natives, please.
There is no need for natives to be untidy. Simply prune more often. These days, pruning is a lot easier with machine hedges and long-arm pruners.
Take these callistemons for example. Scarlet Flame has been pruned a couple of times a year, the Red Alert a couple of times a year, and this beautiful little Green John once a year.
Wait till after they finish flowering and prune. Natives are usually tougher than exotics, and they are just as tidy if pruned.
So, for tidier native shrubs and screens, prune more often.
Oh, I better stop that, didn't I? Because I don't want that to go there. We'll come over to the next tab, and I won't play that yet. So, what did you take away from that? I'll tell you what I took away from that. If you can put a hedge trimmer on a plant, you can prune it pretty well regularly and maybe twice a year. But I'd caution you if we're looking at a heavy prune once a year. The general rule, he talked about callistemons. There was a Westringia there. Most grevilleas, you can take this approach to. Hakeas, tea trees. Look, most of the shrubs, wattles, but I'm going to put an asterisk on wattles for a bit. Let's talk about shrubs. Most of the time you can prune them frequently, tip prune, and take back, a fair amount. And you're going to be safe. Most of the time, the plant will not suffer. There's very few plants very few commonly available garden plants from Australia that are really unforgiving. But I put a little asterisk on acacias, and I also would put that on some of the eucalypts. And when your callistemons or your melaleucas become mature and are trees, unless they have been regularly pruned, this is where the problem comes in. What are you doing, Loz? Have you got yourself caught? What are you doing? Oh no, he's all right. Or is he? Hang on, I think he is caught. Hang on. Bear with me. Oh no, you're all right. No, he's just upset at the toy. What you need to really know is you need to be able to distinguish between really fresh new growth and then the current season's growth, and then what we would term mature wood, and then you've got old wood. And if callistemons are really good to recognise this, a lot of callistemons, when they've got new growth, it will be a different colour than the most of the leaves. And then directly behind that, you'll have current season growth, but it's still fresh, soft wood. Then usually, just behind that, where there may have been flowers, you may have some seed pods. You'll have last season's wood, and then behind that, you'll see the mature wood. And the bark is generally a different colour. Sometimes it's a different texture. And I can't really show you any examples that are 100% right. But if you go to any plant that is actively growing, that is in good health, you'll see this current season wood or new wood and last season's wood or last year's wood. That will be the case on some deciduous trees, and then you'll see the mature wood. Where you want to be careful is not to go back into the mature wood. If you need to reduce the size of your plant, and I talked about this with Naomi's climber last week or the week before, if you need to actually reduce the size and the volume of a mature plant, you go in and take maybe 25% of it, and maybe even a bit more, and reduce the actual total amount of the plant. If you do it in that sort of systematic way from inside the plant, inside the framework, rather than from the extremities, and then we're talking about a mature plant, remember, over mature maybe, and we can take this approach with eucalypts and with mature wattles as well, if they're bushy, if they're many stemmed or many trunked plants. Now, I'm going to jump forward a little bit. If you have to take that approach, how do you take the decisions about which branches or which stems to take out? And my rule of thumb is, if you see something cross over, leave the branch that goes from the centre out to the outside and take out the crossover branch. So if there's a branch that's crossing back towards the interior of the plant, take that out. Now there's a question that someone should be asking me, and that is, where do you make the cut? Or how do you make the cut? You make the cut not hard up against the branch or the trunk that it shoots from, but just a very short distance away and at a slight angle, and the angle is from the top of the shoot where it joins the trunk coming back. So let me maybe I'll draw a diagram for that and see if we can get it to show up on the. I better use a thick texter here. So okay, is this gonna show up? Yes. Okay, I think that's thick enough. So. Now let's see. Is it going? There we go. Can you see? It's not exactly in focus, but can you see how the angle isn't straight down the trunk? You don't want to cut straight down the trunk. That can lead to some disease. Maybe I better make a little. I better make a better drawing and put it on the website. Or maybe do a special little cartoon drawing. Gee, Loz is giving his toy a hard time up there. Oh yeah. So yeah, don't cut straight down the trunk, because that actually is a longer cut into some of the tissues that don't heal quickly. All right, Loz is really going off. Now where was I? Okay, yep. So where I was at was really, you try and open up the inside of a mature plant by taking over crossovers, and go from your stem, leave the branches that are going out, and anything that comes back in, cut those out. But if you've got to reduce a plant's size from the outside in because it's filling up too much space and you haven't been regularly pruning it, start by taking about 25% of the length back on sort of every second branch. That way, if you have cut too deep, is why I'm saying don't cut uniformly if you're not familiar with how this particular plant will respond to pruning. Don't do all of it and cut it all the way back in. Test it the first time you do it and bring every second branch in by maybe 20-25%. And if they respond well, meaning they reshoot rather than don't shoot and start to die, well, then you know that the way you pruned is okay, and then you can go and do the rest of it. Approach though, don't prune. Now this is sort of golden rule for everyone. Don't prune so that you're going to encourage new growth if you know that in the next short while there is some very hot weather coming, or conversely, Loz. If you're new to the show, Loz, actually, you might come over. He's looking a bit stressed. You'll probably come over now. You can meet him in a minute, or him or her. I don't know if it's him or her. If really warm weather, really hot weather is anticipated within 3 or 4 weeks, don't encourage pruning for new shoots. And if you're about to go into weather with frost, same thing. Wait until those dangers are past before you go into it. Now, I was hoping we'd be having some comments and people saying, I don't know how to prune. I'm having trouble pruning. So I'm going to run the next one, which is really about pruning grevilleas, from Phil Dudman Gardening. This is only three and a half minutes, so let's let this run. And I don't subscribe to everything in this, and I'll tell you why in the end, but I think it's a useful video.
Grevilleas have to be Australia's most popular name for the garden, and the birds love them too. Grevilleas are also very quick growing, so don't be shy to give them a good pruning. This one here is only about 18 months old, and you can see already it's up to my height, and I'm 6'5", so they're really very, very fast. So if you want to keep them looking good, you've got to prune them to keep them compact, and you need to prune them every year. Now's the time, October, November, when the jacarandas are in bloom. That's a good way to remember it. This is the perfect time to prune them. That's what we're going to do today. Now, the first thing to do is assess the general shape. With this one, we're going to try to create a bit of a trunk at the base with a bit of a mop top on top. Now, I can see over here, there's already a piece that's growing very, very low from the base of this tree, and it's not going to fit in with the type of shape we're going to do. So that's the first thing we're going to do, is take away that piece from the base. And it's a bit thick for using a pair of secateurs, so I'm going to use a nice sharp pruning saw to make sure I get a really nice finish on this. And I've decided I'm going to take the cut right back to the trunk. I don't want to leave a messy stub, because it's just only going to produce lots more growth from there. We don't want that here. We want to take it back hard to the trunk so that it's dealt with, it's out of the way completely. Now, I'm not going to take it off in one go. It's a good rule with anything with a bit of weight to take it off in small pieces. If you try to take it off in one cut straight away, you might risk ripping the bark, and we don't want to do that. So it's just a matter of a little undercut first, and then you work your way outward from the trunk and take an overcut, and that'll break off nicely. Now it's just a matter of taking that final cut off, and you can do that nice and easily. Now you've got most of the weight off that branch, smoothly off it goes. With the lower branch out of the way, we're ready to start doing some real shaping. Now, you can take them back by at least 1/3 to even 2/3 if you like, depending on how big and how compact you want to keep your grevillea. I'm going to take this one back by at least about 1/2. There's no real science to it, it's just a matter of getting in and taking out the pieces in one go with like that to take the bulk away. And once we get in and do that, we can have a better look at what we've got left. When you've removed the thicker branches, use your secateurs to trim back the remaining side shoots. It's a good idea to take off any branches that cross over the centre so that you end up with a vase-shaped branching structure, much like when pruning a rose bush. Within weeks, you'll see lots of fresh new growth appearing. And before you know it, your grevillea will be thicker and bushier and ready to give you lots more of those beautiful blooms.
All right. Okay, so two things in Phil's video which I thought were really good. One, how to cut with a saw, and I should have mentioned this too, about your equipment when you're going to do any pruning. One, it's got to be sharp. Don't try and cut big branches with secateurs. You would be better with a saw if you if you don't have loppers like Phil did there, pruners. Don't try and cut large branches with secateurs. That bruises the bark, will damage your wrist potentially. It will certainly damage the tree, or the plant. Don't do that. If you don't have loppers, use a pruning saw, or if you don't have a pruning saw, use a sharp bow saw, or even a small hardware kind of handyman saw. That would be preferable to trying to do it with secateurs. The other thing about your equipment, apart from it being sharp, make sure it's clean. Give it a wipe down. 10% bleach solution is always a good option. Clean down your surfaces before you go from one plant to another. Particularly important with plants that might be susceptible to Phytophthora, so that's eucalypts, all the proteaceae, Banksias, grevilleas, etc. And for lots of, fruit trees, roses, there are lots and lots of diseases that can be spread from pruning. So just when you're moving from plant to plant, just give your equipment a wipe down with a 10% bleach solution, and that will reduce the chances of anything like that happening. Now that was a pretty savage prune that Phil gave to that grevillea, and a lot of the really vigorous grevillea hybrids will handle that, but not all grevilleas will handle that treatment. So if you have not pruned a mature grevillea, and this goes for everything, if you haven't pruned that species or that variety before, if you don't know how it's going to react to a very hard prune, well then just do a little bit first. Do a couple of branches first and see how they respond. Most of the vigorous Australian natives will shoot really quickly, and you'll know if they've responded well. But if they're not shooting from just behind where you did the pruning, and they're shooting from much further back in the plant, it means you've pruned in the wrong spot generally. If they don't shoot at all, they did not like where you pruned, and you may have pruned too far back into mature wood. So not all plants in the one genus are the same. You might have heard that some eucalypts, some Banksias, grevilleas, hakeas have a thing called a lignotuber. Now they can be pruned right back down to ground level if you need to. That helps those plants survive bushfires. A lot of other eucalypts have a thing called epicormic buds, so that when a fire comes through and most of the branches lose all their foliage, new shoots come out from the trunk and from the stems at all different places, not necessarily aligned with where branches and where nodes are. But I didn't really want to get into nodes too much in general today. That's a reaction to like a shock, a natural shock that may kill the plant. That's not what you're trying to do in a horticulture situation. You're trying to improve the look of the plant or to encourage things like new growth at the right time of year or a second flush of flowering. Having got to second flush of flowering, that's where a tip prune after the onset of flowering can encourage another flush of flowering, and callistemons, melaleucas are ideal for this kind of treatment. So this is where it's often good to plant a group of the same type of plants so that you can go through and after one has flowered, do a tip prune, and then that'll get more flowering, which in most natives is pretty rapid. And then when that tree or that shrub is flowering, you can go and do the others, and then they'll flower a little bit later, and that'll get you a longer flowering period in different parts of the garden. There's some natives that you've got to be really careful with, and I don't want to be too generic here, but a lot of the smaller, plants in the Rutaceae family, so Baronias are in those, Eriosimons, Myoporums, some of those plants, they really don't like to be pruned at the wrong time, and they like a tip prune frequently, like the Osbreed video showed. They were Westringias, but that kind of treatment, a lot of the plants really like. If you are familiar with Diosma, which is not a native, Colonemia is, I think, is the correct generic term, but they're sold in nurseries as Diosma, golden Diosma, pink Diosma. They like really frequent light prunes. But if one gets out of hand and you go back and hack it hard, have you ever seen those horrible woody plants? A lot of hedging plants are the same. They're great when you are pruning them very frequently, but you leave them for 2 years and then you go back and try and cut them back to where you want them to be. And those plants don't like being pruned on old wood. So then you end up with a horrible, twiggy, rotten-looking hedges. So it's very hard to give you hard and fast rules. If you don't know how the plant reacts, just do a light tip prune and see how it reacts. If you want to be a bit more adventurous on 1 or 2 branches that are maybe around the back of the plant, prune them back a bit harder and see how they respond. Now, I should be putting comments up from people saying, but where do you know where to make the cut? Is anyone thinking that? Where do you know where to make the cut, Grant? Well, as a general rule, you come back to a bud or a node. And a node really is an undeveloped bud. Now, are you all familiar with what a bud is when you look at a stem of a plant? Please tell me yes. Please tell me something. Oh, by the way, Glenn, thank you for the Facebook love there too. Now, if you know what a bud is, not all plants develop a bud on the outside, which is where they're going to shoot from on each stem. Not every plant will do that, but some will give you an indication when you look at them that there may be just a little bump on the surface that if you run your finger along the stem, you'll feel it, and that will be a node. It's actually just a bud, but it's still below the bark. It's not forming outside of the bark. So a good guide for where to prune is you prune back to a bud that is pointing out to the outside. That's the general rule. And if you do that, you won't get those branches growing back inside, getting those crossover branches. So you'll end up with that vase-shaped plant. Why is vase-shaped good? They just tend to look better. They have less bulk. They'll give you the nice outside of the bush that we all want, with the flowers displaying and whatnot, without having a lot more plant material. And if there's a lot more plant material, it needs a lot more water and a lot more fertilizer or nutrients to perform. In a horticultural sense, you can take a lot of that out. But there'll be some plants that you don't want to do that for if they're shelter plants for birds and other animals. Just bear that in mind. There's always a contradiction when we're talking about gardening. There's some plants that you want to do some things and some plants you want to do other things. Do we have a question or a comment? Don't tell me I'm making perfect sense. I must have. There must be something you disagree with along the way. No comments yet. Okay. All right. Now I'm just going to make some comment. Here we go. Good. Hello, Betty. Nice to see you. I did prune 7 grevilleas this season. They did not kill any. They're all sprouting well. Then I watered with sea salt, starting to flower now. Yep, that's sea salt is a pretty good, safe product for natives in general. It can also, if you want to give plants a real kickstart, especially if they've got soft new growth, you can actually use sea salt diluted down to diluted to half the recommended rate as a spray on soft new growth. But don't do it if the weather's going to be hot, and don't do it if it's going to rain, because one, if it's hot, that can actually lead to burning the foliage, and if it's going to rain, you're just wasting the nutrient. But yeah, that's really good. Betty, it was you, Betty, wasn't it, was asking about the parrot with the green wing? Forgot that right? Was that what we were last week? Did you manage to satisfy yourself what it was? Glenn. Okay. All right, this is a really good question, Glenn. And this was where we were going to go next. Now, question read Banksias, the new ones I put in are trunks. Will they branch out, or will they need the top chop to get them to thicken up? They're only in for a few months. Okay. If you want them to branch out, Glenn, most Banksias will shoot from where you cut them. They will send out multiple shoots. So if you want it to be multi-branched, you need to cut back about to where you want them to branch from. And depending on the Banksia, like Integrifolia, I tend to want, and same with Serrata, I tend to want to get up to have a single leader, and then to let the plant decide where it wants to send out its first laterals, and then I would prune from there. But there are cultivars which behave a little bit differently, but that's my general rule for those. But with some of the other Banksias, and indeed some of the sort of tropical style grevilleas, I would prune below where I would want the bulk of the plant to be. So if you want the plant to be 1.5 meters high, and it's one of the vigorous varieties, just trying to think some of the Banksias like this. Look, Marginata is really good, and Ericofolia, Collina spinulosa, all that group, and all of their cultivars will branch where you cut them and send out branches, but then you'll get a flower at that bud where all the shoots have come out from. So you'll see that in the growth of the plant, if they've budded up before, or if you've seen them. And Glenn, you're in the perfect situation at the Botanic Gardens. Treat the Banksias that flower on the lateral end of a stem differently to the ones that flower in a terminal bud. For instance, I think all the Waratahs are all flowering at a terminal bud. So you want to have, that's where the regular pruning comes in, so that you get lots of those lateral branches. Also, that generally means that you'll get flowers on younger wood for the plants that flower on the terminal end of a shoot. The plants that flower in at the lateral end of the shoot, but the plants that flower from a lateral bud, they'll generally flower on that flower will happen on the season before's wood, or even 2 seasons before. So that's where you're planning ahead for prune, get your laterals, prune those laterals, get more laterals, and that means you'll then have more of those buds that are at the apex of where you have made your previous season's cut. Does that make sense? Let me just pull up. I'll show you what I mean. Okay. Bear with me. I'll see if I can find. Oh, here's a good picture. Okay. Let me share that. Let me share this. Come on. Wait. Okay. Okay, I'll pop this down. Now, Glenn, see on this larger picture, I hope you can see it. Let me get it to it again. Now, can you see where, there we are. You can see that the flower bud has been produced at the place where it was last pruned. I'll see if we can find another one a bit like that. Let's go back. Oh, here's another good shot. So you can see that wherever the branches are coming out, let's have a look at this one. I hope you can see that clearly. That's actually a really good. There we are. where are we? So that should show. Oh, hang on. Share that tab. There we go. Have we got it up? Yes. Okay. Let me go back to that page. So does that show you what I was meaning about the flower develops where the last pruning has happened, and then all of those lateral branches that spring out are the current season's wood, and the flower has developed on last season's wood, and that is on all of these. There's another, well, really common here too, birthday candles. Same kind of thing. See how the flowers are coming from, I can click to enlarge. There we are. So the flowers are not coming from the end of a branch. That shows it well. You can see where it was, where the last tip pruning happened. They sent out 3, 4, or 5 laterals, and then that's where the flower cone develops. So let me come back here. So cool. Okay. Well, Glenn's got some value out of it. Let's see. Oh, Naomi, thank you for the Facebook like there. Thank you very much, Naomi. So that's really the first rule that you look for when you're pruning a shrub. If you're pruning for flowers, or if indeed it's not the flower you want, but decorative cones or nuts or something like that, you want the same thing. You want to encourage the flowering in the right place. Betty says, okay, Betty, that is Betty's question. I have over 40 different Banksias. Do I need to prune all the old flowers that have finished off to let the new flowers coming along grow well? Okay, you just saw that example of Banksia marginata, and that's also Ericifolia. Spinulosa is the same. That where the flower develops is in like the cradle of of shoots, like where shoots have come off from a previous year's tip prune, maybe. Those kind of those Banksias, and you've got 40, so you're going to have some that behave a different way, and I'll give you an idea for those in a minute. But where the flower has shot from the centre of a bunch of shoots, don't prune those old flowers off. What you want to do is tip prune each of those shoots that have come from that point where the flower is. Prune those back to where you want your next season's flowers, and at the point where you do the pruning, once the shoots have come out from there, that's where your next lot of flowers will come from. But there are Banksias like Praemorsa. I'm just trying to think whether Baxteri. Trying to think if Victoria Hookerana, I think, is one of these. I think Victoria might be as well. Testing my memory. I've got a Banksia book over here. I should grab it in a second. But those flowers develop at the end of a branch. Now, if you want to encourage more flowers yes, you take the end of the branch off, or you can let or if they've got decorative cones, and that's often what a lot of Banksias do have, and if you want to harvest the seeds as well, this is another thing to think about. But if you've got lots of them, if you've got lots of flowers and lots of cones developing, then go back to my rule of take off a third or a half of them and leave half of them to develop into cones if you want to retain them. But the key takeaway is have a look at each of your Banksias and just notice where the flowers form. And if the flowers form from where you can see that there has either been a cut or where naturally the plant has just branched out, and the flower cone has formed in a junction, like in a cradle, I wouldn't prune those ones out. But that's where you want to tip prune everywhere, so you get those junctions forming, those shoots with lots of laterals that at the point of the cut, and then you'll get more flowers in that spot. The other thing to think about where to prune is how big do you want the plant to get, and sometimes you're pruning not to encourage flowers, but to actually bring the plant back in size. But that's a slightly different issue. Did that help? Now, hello people on X. Oh, nice lot on YouTube. Hello YouTube. Hello Facebook and Twitch. Nice to have you all here. Does anyone want to throw another question at me, and we'll see if I can rise to the challenge. Betty, did that make sense? And have you got many of your Banksias that have already flowered? Now, what have we got? Betty says, we had an original tree Banksia die now over the fence in the next paddock. 20 trees of the one that died going well. Now, where you are, Betty, was that would have been a Banksia serrata, I think. Am I right? The old man Banksia, is that what we are calling it? Just see if I can get a nice there's a good shot of a Banksia serrata. Threatened in Tasmania. Oh, what do you know? Okay. So marginata. All right. So marginatas are really quite forgiving with their pruning too, Betty. So you could that is one variety that, as long as you don't print, and as long as you don't. Although I think marginata has a lignotuber. Let me just check that. I'll just. Marginata, you said. Marginata. Okay, some forms have a lignotuber. So, what you need to look for, Betty, to see if your Banksia has a lignotuber is there a big, is there a swelling, like a bit of a bulbous bit at the bottom of the stem? Yeah, there we are. I had a serrata I planted myself. Took 8 years to flower. Was that from seed? Did you grow it from seed, or did you buy it as a plant? Huge big flower. Yep, very good. Serrata, Banksia serrata is very reliable. Yeah, but if it's got a lignotuber, they will handle pretty heavy pruning as a rule. And those forms that have a lignotuber are adapted to survive bushfire. Yeah. Okay. Any more questions? We've been going a while, so I thought this would. I think we'll do as later down the track. We'll do an episode on pruning eucalypts, all on their own. The one thing I do want to mention about eucalypts, and I'll just go to this. I just want to show you one other thing. To look out for. Okay. All right, there's a couple here I'm going to show. Get out of there. Okay. All those things with notifications and rubbish that I don't want to look at. Okay, this one might be better. Let's have a look at this. Okay. Oh, this is I found a good site. Let me just get it up. Naomi asks, are we discussing Banksia only this time? No, we're discussing anything. Pruning is just basically the topic. So you can ask anything, Naomi. I'm just about to show an example of a problem in gardens I often see not attended to, and then they can create problems later. So I'm going to show that in a bit. Betty says, growing Waratah flowered in 2022, pruned after the flower finished, never flowered at all in 2023. Is this normal? Okay, sorry, I just need to take Instagram's finish for the day. Is this normal? Now, it would depend how you pruned, Betty. So in a second, I will give you some Waratah specific tips. But now I just want to show everyone, and this is... so what's this from? Local Tree Care. So... we don't want to chat with local tree care. Now, here is an issue that crops up. Now, I hope you can see what we have here. Try and describe it. This happens often with eucalypts, and we get something called bifurcation. And that is where a eucalypt will be growing... Betty, I'll give you a few examples about Waratahs in a minute. I'll just explain this bit about bifurcation. So you can see that's the base of the eucalypt. That's not far from the bottom, and you've had two stems come out. And when the plant was young, one of those should have been pruned off, and then the tree will develop with a nice straight trunk. What happens when you have this situation of bifurcation? And it will happen in lots of different types of plants that have trunks, but you will often see this in eucalypts. You can see where the circle is. There's what's called included bark. Each of those trunks has bark around it, and plants grow by growing outwards in the trunk. So over time, those trunks are forced apart, and eventually they split. And what will often happen, this will often happen either in times of high wind or at a time when the plant might be really stressed, like underwater stress in drought. But what will generally happen is one side will just split and fall right down. Apart from the fact that damages the plant, half of it's got to fall down, and what's it going to fall on in a garden situation, or if it's a street tree or something. So if you do have, just have a look at your plants and see if you've got bifurcated trunks, and if you do, common in eucalypts, but that can happen in many of the other plants. If you have bifurcated trunks, please prune back. You got to prune it at one of them as if it's a big branch. Can maybe talk about how to do that. The same, you would, I'd need to draw a diagram for that. But you do really want to take those out. Okay. Waratahs. All right, Betty, let's so let's get see if I can find a video. Okay, there's one here from Angus Stewart. I will stop that. Neutrog TV. Okay, so this is like a commercial one, but we'll give it a try. Hopefully we can run this. I like Angus Stewart, so I'll just make sure we're in the stream. We're in the stream. I'll get him on full screen. Here we go. Just make sure we can see him well. Okay. Okay, you should be able to hear him. Let's go.
I recently put up a video on why you should fertilise your Australian native plants. It's because we want them to thrive and not just survive. So today I want to address the question of what to use and when and how to apply it. I'm going to use a classic example of a spring flowering shrub, in this case the waratah. I put this in as a small plant about a year ago, and at the time I used this solid native plant food.
Ooh, it's an
low
ad
phosphorus,
coming
which
up.
waratahs need. It's organically based, and it's one I helped develop. So that's acted as a slow release source of nutrients to really get the root system well established.
Okay, get on with
and
it.
the payoff for that was that I had brilliant flowering through spring. There were actually 4 flowers. They're now finished, and we can see it's just starting to push out some new vegetative growth, and I really want to maximise that growth and get the plant up to here, and if I can, double the flower count for next spring. So how I'm going to do that is by using a liquid native plant fertiliser, which I'll just water in around the roots. But before I do that, a small tidy up. You can see these stumps where the flower was, and the new growth is emerging just below that. So I'll just nip that off, and that'll make way for that new growth. So
Okay, so did you notice that where he cut, and I'll just bring it back, where he cut was, he cut off the spent flower, but he left the 2 shoots. So you're going to get 2 long shoots.
Nip that off, and that'll make way for that new growth. So next step is to apply our liquid fertiliser. Very simple, 1 capful in a watering can. Give it a bit of a stir with my very sophisticated stirring tool, and then just water in really well around the roots, and the job's right. Happy gardening.
Let's come back here and remove that now. Now here's Betty. Betty's made the point. Yeah, you probably, Betty, have come back into the previous year's wood, which means you're going to have to wait 1 more flowering season for them to come out. And that's why I always advise, if you haven't pruned the plant before, just test it in a couple of different spots. And with most of the natives too, if you missed a year of pruning, okay, and it might have got too big, and I often see this with waratahs where they become massive, and then people say, I can't reach up to actually cut the flowers off. Well, the only way to get the flowers back to where you would like to and be able to prune them each year is you have to prune it really hard, right back down, maybe to waist level or lower. And when you do that, the plant will probably shoot again, and it will probably do so a bit slower than if you were pruning the tips. But you're gonna lose a season of flowering, but you get the plant back to the size that you want, and that's what some of these decisions are based on. What you need in the garden. So, yeah. Naomi, are we discussing Banksias only? No. You got a question on anything else, Naomi? Did you manage to find any of the plants that you were looking for that we were chasing down last week? Happy to take a question on anything. Doesn't have to be on Banksias, doesn't have to be on Grevilleas, doesn't have to be on native plants. It can be on a Daphne or something. I saw a really interesting episode of Better Homes and Gardens yesterday, and it was Melissa King was in Singapore, and that looked pretty amazing. Really did look good. Okay, I'll just wait and see if we get any more comments. So very happy to answer anything. I was just seeing if there were any on any of the other platforms. So yeah, Naomi, let us know if you tracked down any of the plants you were looking for. I'll just have a look at any of these other. Oh yes, I will show. I will share this page. So this is from the Australian Plant Society Victoria, and just drives home that we prune for different reasons: appearance and flower production, maintaining shape, tip pruning, which is often to do the above, promoting more branches, which may be more flowers, bushiness, flower picking, regular light pruning. Some plants are much happier when they've been pruned and they're always vigorously growing. You can rejuvenate old plants. I think sort of talked about that, and we talked about whether there is a lignituber. I think I'll have to do another episode just on identifying a lignituber. Keep your pruning tools sharp and clean. This is a really, really key. Use the plant's natural habit of growth as a guide for its pruning requirements. If you're always fighting against the plant's natural habit of growth when you're pruning, you're going to be pruning a lot. And this, rather than trying to fix the problem with pruning, just don't make the wrong choice to start with. Pick the right plant for the place that you want to use it. That's what I would say. Prune shrubs back by about a third of the new growth, and always ensure some green leaves remain. That's right. You can't hack everything. Okay. I think that's a lot of specifics. We might do another thing. Oh, Naomi has given us. Oh, you're still. Naomi hasn't got any of the plants yet. Quite understandably, with a dislocated hip. Oh, I was hoping that might have sort of started to resolve. Okay, pruning a Sydney Christmas bush. Tree is very leggy. Should I prune, or do I just have to leave it now? It's 6 metres tall, so a tip prune is out. Okay. And Naomi enjoyed the Waratah video. Okay. Let me just see. I know the New South Wales Christmas bush loves regular pruning, but I'll just see how the Ceratula petalum deals with pruning. I'm just looking for a really good one that I can play if I can find a okay. right. I'm just looking, Naomi. Most of the okay, so you've got a woody plant. Oh no, hang on. And get back to no, that one's not what I wanted to see. All right, most of what I'm seeing is don't cut back into old or hard wood. Okay, my thoughts on that, Naomi, is cut. I mean, you go to the side of the tree that you don't see. You know, that you're not going to admire. And if you've got a pruning saw, cut a couple, maybe two stems, 2 branches back to about where you want to bring the plant back to. If it's really old, mature, woody growth, I don't think you'll have a lot of luck. But if it's still, it might be mature wood, but not really old woody, and you can tell the difference when you're actually at the plant and you're handling it. Try a couple. Try cutting back as far as you would like to, and then cut a couple back where you can see a change in the bark. Either the texture or the colour, and just see what happens. If your tree is bushy and really big, you're not going to do any damage if you do a couple of branches and see how it reacts. If you cut back into older wood, it means you'll set the plant back maybe a year, maybe 2. But if you get it back to the size you want, then you can do regular tip pruning and regular thinning out to keep it to the size you want. Okay. Any does that help, Naomi? Do you you might not get that beautiful, flush of new growth that we grow the plant for, but yeah, but if it's too far gone, the question is it too far gone to manage? And hopefully it's not too far gone to manage. Okay, great. So Naomi's going to give that a try. Okay, anyone else got any other questions? Betty, I should just do a Betty and Naomi show coming in. Loz loves beads. That's another thing I've discovered with this new toy. Loz loves beads. Just hasn't been interested in eating while he's had the new toy anywhere near as much as he normally does. So I'm going to put some music on and we'll just bring that down and we'll just see if anyone's got any more questions or comments. And I think the main thing I want you to take away is okay, we have hundreds of kangaroo tails growing in paddock and we slash over them at the end of flowering. I heard the other day wood ash from old okay. I would want to know what was burnt in the fire pit. If it was only timber, yeah, I would reckon that's fine, especially if it's if it's really ash. If it was only timber, okay, old trees. Okay, as long as there's no chemicals, paints, nails, wire, all that kind of stuff that often finds its way into, bonfires and old fire pits, especially on agricultural sites. If you know that it was only trees that, no poison, no sump oil, I think you could lightly spread wood ash. I would, that's what would normally happen. If you've got a big compost heap or something, Betty, I would, just to be safe, I would incorporate the ash into a compost heap and let it age down with other stuff. But yeah, as a general rule, as long as it's just wood ash, I would spread it lightly. I wouldn't spread it. I wouldn't heap it. I wouldn't pile it anywhere. So yeah, if it's really fine, you can maybe put it in a bucket and make lots of buckets, but put a handful into a bucket and slosh it around. That way it'll probably penetrate faster. But yeah, that would be my thoughts there. I'd just be really sure that there's no chemicals or metals or paints or pesticide containers or anything like that have found their way into an old heap. So yeah. Oh, I should have put that on loop, shouldn't I? I'll loop it now. Go back to feeding the ducks. So, any other questions? And you can also suggest things you would like me to cover in another habitat gardening. If you would like. Oh, here we go. Comment. Sorry, I was just checking on the others. Naomi, a suggestion for anything about habitat gardening is not off topic. Yes, absolutely. Have you got any particular seeds that you want to raise in mind? Very different if we're talking about eucalypts, or if we're talking about any of the proteaceae, or if we're talking about maybe something that comes from berries, or Ballardieras, or waratahs and grass trees. Okay. Well, I'm just making a note of it. Now, tell me, are grass trees from the local variety, or did you order some seeds? Because some grass trees are a little bit different to others. So that I'm just making a note. I might prepare a tray of each and show you what I do, and then we can track the progress. So just let me know. Yeah, are they sort of? Have you collected them yourselves? Okay, cool. That's the question. Okay, so you got them from plant on established property. Okay. All right, let's have a look at that next week. Might talk about preparation. Not sure if the grass trees need to be stratified. We'll talk about that next week. Hey, I think there is some thought that grass trees can benefit from stratification. I won't explain what that is now, but that's something that that some seeds need to be able to germinate quickly. Quickly in gardeners, in a gardener's time frame. Okay. Right. We got. I just had a look at who'd popped in on Instagram, and I saw that Habitat Innovation. So I hope it was Mark. I'm not sure who's running the Habitat Innovation nowadays. Let's have a look. I'll just have a look who is generally on the Instagram. Oh, they've got a nice following on the Instagram now, haven't they? Oh no, it looks like it's Mick. Oh, there's the whole crew. Hang on. Wow, look at that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Eight people in the Habitat Innovation now. Mick and the gang. Look at that. That's excellent. All right. Any other questions? Sorry, I didn't share the Instagram, but that'd be good. Thanks, Naomi. It's always fun doing talking about gardening and talking about plants. It's almost as much fun as talking about birds. Can you hear Loz up there? He's chirping away and still attacking his toy. He loves it. And he's flying further and further every day, so that's really great. So, any other questions? We'll just let this. I got up early to go and get my hair cut. And, could have stayed in bed. Anyone got any other suggestions they'd like me to cover in the gardening side of things? I'm not sure nowadays. I think it might be 1,000. I know I need to get to 1,000. Have I nearly got 500 followers on Instagram? Have I? I see that I keep getting lots of people following on Threads, but I've just kind of lost interest. The algorithms make it very, very difficult to get to new people, but the live stream seems to get me pushed out to people, so I like that. Yeah, I don't know if we're 500 on Instagram. What I am wanting to do is get to 1,000 on YouTube. That's my first aim, and then I'll probably start looking at others. I just don't get the interaction on Threads or on Facebook. Not Facebook so much, on Instagram so much. It's really died down. So, and I don't have the mental bandwidth to spend hours on it. Yeah. So, but yeah, it'd be nice. Maybe it makes a difference when you get to 500 or 1,000, and then you start getting pushed out to more people. I don't know. Oh, there we are. Glenn's got 10k. Yeah. I do know that if you're posting lots of nice photos, you have much more growth than if you're doing the kind of stuff I do. So, yeah, I just don't know. I'm just going to do what I like to do and see how it goes. And I've got to spend more time chasing up guests. It's harder and harder to get people to come on because everybody's got their own thing going on now. And people still sort of think, oh no, I can't go on some show if I've got my own show, and that's just rubbish. You go on everything you can, I reckon. Anyway, that's all just housekeeping stuff. Loz popped down for a snack, had a drink. You coming over, buddy? Hey? Want to come over? No, he's having a drink. So, all right, last chance. We'll do. We'll do last chance for a question or a comment, and otherwise, when this track runs down, which is only going to be a minute or two, we'll be pulling out. So, folks, coming up, well, of course, next Saturday morning, 9:30 a.m, Habitat Gardening will be back in its regular time slot. Well, I tell you, there's quite a few people popped in. Is this a better time? Is the afternoon a better time than the morning? I always thought the morning would be good so you could talk plants and gardening and then go off to, buy some tools or some fertilizer or some plants. Be interested in that feedback. So I'm going to let the thing run again. You can tell me that. Here we go. Yes, it's running again. So is the afternoon a better time than the morning? Yeah. So we'll be back anyway. We'll be back next Saturday. And then back on Monday. And then we're coming up to Easter, aren't we? So, no, we're not. We're a month away from Easter, where you put the Monday on the 31st at the start of the month on these whiteboards. So, no, I'm looking at the wrong thing. So, Monday I'll be talking urban birds again at... Okay, so Naomi, I think you're telling me that when you're out and about, you'll be out looking at birds. So the morning is better for your particular situation, hey? I did have a dream about doing the gardening show, the Habitat Gardening, earlier, but I'd struggle. Honestly, I'd struggle. I'd need my breakfast for that. Okay. Anyone else? We'll just let this go for one more cycle, and then I think it's time for a rest. Well, thanks, Mr. Whoever's on Twitch watching. You've been with us the whole time. Thank you. Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter/X. Been great to have you all here. Naomi, Betty, Glenn, for joining in the Riot Squad. And we'll just let this track come to a conclusion. And if somebody comes in with a question, I'll address it, or a comment. Otherwise, that'll be it for the Saturday, and I'll get back to playing with my advisor, my avian advisor, and sometime co-host, who you can hear up there. He's having a very good time. Or it. I have trouble not calling him a he. He's been quite aggressive this week. Like very trying to be dominant. Not aggressive really, just trying to be dominant. They're very confident, dominant birds. Yeah, I agree. Want to come down? All right, folks. No more. There's been no more comments, so that's going to be that. I look forward to catching you next Saturday for Habitat Gardening at the regular time, 9:30 a.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time. And otherwise, I'll be popping up again on Monday. And I can't remember what time I scheduled it for. I think we're back to 12:30, I think. Might even be 12. Would you like me to check? Oh no, doesn't matter. You know it's Monday afternoon around lunchtime, and we'll be talking urban birds. I've dug up some more interesting conservation news, and we'll chase that down then. Great to have you all with us again, gardeners, bird nerds. See you later. I'm Grant. I am a bird nerd and a plant nerd.